Welcome. Today we will read Lesson 74 in the workbook, and from the text we will read Chapter 7, Section 10, The Confusion of Pain and Joy. And now for Lesson 74. There is no will but God's. The idea for today can be regarded as the central thought toward which all our exercises are directed. God's is the only will. When you have recognized this, you have recognized that your will is His. The belief that conflict is possible has gone. Peace has replaced the strange idea that you are torn by conflicting goals. As an expression of the will of God, you have no goal but His. There is great peace in today's idea, and the exercises for today are directed toward finding it. The idea itself is wholly true. Therefore, it cannot give rise to illusions. Without illusions, conflict is impossible. Let us try to recognize this today and experience the peace this recognition brings. Begin the longer practice periods by repeating these thoughts several times, slowly and with firm determination to understand what they mean and to hold them in mind. There is no will but God's. I cannot be in conflict. Then spend several minutes in adding some related thoughts, such as, I am at peace. Nothing can disturb me. My will is God's. My will and God's are one. God wills peace for His Son. During this introductory phase, be sure to deal quickly with any conflict thoughts that may cross your mind. Tell yourself immediately, there is no will but God's. These conflict thoughts are meaningless. If there is one conflict area that seems particularly difficult to resolve, single it out for special consideration. Think about it briefly, but very specifically. Identify the particular person or persons and the situation or situations involved, and tell yourself, there is no will but God's. I share it with Him. My conflicts about cannot be real. After you have cleared your mind in this way, close your eyes and try to experience the peace to which your reality entitles you. Sink into it and feel it closing around you. There may be some temptation to mistake these attempts for withdrawal, but the difference is easily detected. If you are succeeding, you will feel a deep sense of joy and an increased alertness rather than a feeling of drowsiness and enervation. Joy characterizes peace. By this experience will you recognize that you have reached it. If you feel yourself slipping off into withdrawal, quickly repeat the idea for today and try again. Do this as often as necessary. There is definite gain in refusing to allow retreat into withdrawal, even if you do not experience the peace you seek. In the shorter periods which should be undertaken at regular and predetermined intervals today, say to yourself, "There is no will but God's. I seek His peace today." Then try to find what you are seeking. A minute or two every half an hour, with eyes closed if possible, would be well spent on this today. In an earlier lesson, we learned that personal ego goals are conflictual by nature, and conflict leads to stress. Without conflicting goals, peace arises in awareness. In this lesson, we are told there are not two wills, but only one is real, and thus there is no conflict of wills. Everyone was created as the loving intention of one's Creator. One's very being is the will of one's source, the source of all love. In the practice period, one is directed to clear one's mind by recognizing the unreality of any conflicting personal thoughts, and to open to the experience of the underlying peace, finding oneself sinking downward and immersing oneself in the stillness. One notices an energizing inner aliveness. This is the joy of being, that is the will of God's love for oneself. And now for our text reading for today, from Chapter 7, Section 10, The Confusion of Pain and Joy. The kingdom is the result of premises, just as this world is. You may have carried the ego's reasoning to its logical conclusion, which is total confusion about everything. If you really saw this result, you could not want it. The only reason you could possibly want any part of it is because you do not see the whole of it. You are willing to look at the ego's premises, but not at their logical outcome. Is it not possible that you have done the same thing with the premises of God? Your creations are the logical outcome of His premises. His thinking has established them for you. They are exactly where they belong. They belong in your mind as part of your identification with His. But your state of mind and your recognition of what is in it depend on what you believe about your mind. Whatever these beliefs may be, they are the premises that will determine what you accept into your mind. It is surely clear that you can both accept into your mind what is not there and deny what is. Yet the function God Himself gave your mind through His, you may deny, but you cannot prevent. It is the logical outcome of what you are. The ability to see a logical outcome depends on the willingness to see it. But its truth has nothing to do with your willingness. Truth is God's will. Share His will and you share what He knows. Deny His will as yours, and you are denying His kingdom and yours. The Holy Spirit will direct you only so as to avoid pain. Surely no one would object to this goal if he recognized it. The problem is not whether what the Holy Spirit says is true, but whether you want to listen to what He says. You no more recognize what is painful than you know what is joyful, and are in fact very apt to confuse the two. The Holy Spirit's main function is to teach you to tell them apart. What is joyful to you is painful to the ego. And as long as you are in doubt about what you are, you will be confused about joy and pain. This confusion is the cause of the whole idea of sacrifice. Obey the Holy Spirit and you will be giving up the ego. But you will be sacrificing nothing. On the contrary, you will be gaining everything. If you believe this, there would be no conflict. That is why you need to demonstrate the obvious to yourself. It is not obvious to you. You believe that doing the opposite of God's will can be better for you. You also believe that it is possible to do the opposite of God's will. Therefore, you believe that an impossible choice is open to you, and one which is both fearful and desirable. Yet God wills. He does not wish. Your will is as powerful as His because it is His. The ego's wishes do not mean anything, because the ego wishes for the impossible. You can wish for the impossible, but you can will only with God. This is the ego's weakness and your strength. The Holy Spirit always sides with you and with your strength. As long as you avoid His guidance in any way, you want to be weak. Yet weakness is frightening. What else then can this decision mean except that you want to be fearful? The Holy Spirit never asks for sacrifice, but the ego always does. When you are confused about this distinction in motivation, it can only be due to projection. Projection is a confusion in motivation, and given this confusion, trust becomes impossible. No one gladly obeys a guide he does not trust. But this does not mean that the guide is untrustworthy. In this case, it always means that the follower is. However, this too is merely a matter of his own belief. Believing that he can betray, he believes that everything can betray him. Yet this is only because he has elected to follow false guidance. Unable to follow this guidance without fear, he associates fear with guidance and refuses to follow any guidance at all. If the result of this decision is confusion, this is hardly surprising. The Holy Spirit is perfectly trustworthy, as you are. God Himself trusts you, and therefore your trustworthiness is beyond question. It will always remain beyond question, however much you may question it. I said before that you are the will of God. His will is not an idle wish. and your identification with his will is not optional, since it is what you are. Sharing his will with me is not really open to choice, though it may seem to be. The whole separation lies in this error. The only way out of the error is to decide that you do not have to decide anything. Everything has been given you by God's decision. That is his will, and you cannot undo it. Even the relinquishment of your false decision-making prerogative, which the ego guards so jealously, is not accomplished by your wish. It was accomplished for you by the will of God, who has not left you comfortless. His voice will teach you how to distinguish between pain and joy, and will lead you out of the confusion you have made. There is no confusion in the mind of a Son of God, whose will must be the will of the Father, because the Father's will is his Son. Miracles are in accord with the will of God, whose will you do not know, because you are confused about what you will. This means that you are confused about what you are. If you are God's will and do not accept his will, you are denying joy. The miracle is, therefore, a lesson in what joy is. Being a lesson in sharing, it is a lesson in love, which is joy. Every miracle is thus a lesson in truth. And by offering truth, you are learning the difference between pain and joy. In this section, one is told that the Holy Spirit's main function is to teach the difference between pain and joy. The Holy Spirit, being the Spirit of joy, teaches that you are a being of joy, and this joy is God's will for you. Truth is God's will, but in choosing the ego's conflicting wishes, one is only choosing illusion, untruth, and the impossible. By choosing the ego's weakness, one has chosen to be fearful. The ending of this conflict is but to realize that in choosing the Holy Spirit and letting go of the ego, one is indeed sacrificing nothing while gaining everything.